This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warm-up for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2, we're going to have one of our good friends aboard as we talk with Danny Vietti about this wild playoff picture that we've got in Major League Baseball right now. We're also going to be chatting with him about some of the teams that he's feeling a little bit bullish/bearish on, just how unique of a season this is and how every single team, it feels like, has multiple warts. So we're going to be trying to decipher what is a very hard to decipher picture of baseball right now in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by Edge Boost. Edge Boost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. Edge Boost is making sure that 100% of gambling transactions do indeed get approved. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on a small slate on Thursday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Philadelphia Phillies get the job done over the Milwaukee Brewers by a count of 2-0 as for the Brewers. They go 0 of 10 with Ben in scoring position. Freddie Peralta, a solid start. Not a lot of length, but 5 scoreless innings, 8 punch-outs along the way. Aaron Ashby, a scoreless inning. You had Rob Zanoski give you 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless, so Tobias Myers does give up a run in 2/3 of an inning. And Yoel Payamps, welcome back. He gives up a run in his inning of work. And for the Philadelphia Phillies, Ranger Suarez gives up 6 hits in 6 innings, but limits the damage. No runs allowed. And then from there, Matt Strom, Yohan Duran, along with David Robertson, they're all able to end a scoreless inning to be able to get that one to the window. The Pittsburgh Pirates get the job done against the LA Dodgers, 5-3 the final. If you, like me, had the under, that was a overwhelming 9th inning as the Dodgers were able to crank out a 3 spot, highlighted by Mookie Betts getting his 15th home run season, but Paul Skeens continues to be amazing. Clearly not too much of an innings restriction as of now on him, as he goes 6 innings, 8 punch-outs, gave up 2 hits, no runs. From there, you don't mess with the Yohan Ramirez and Evan Sisk. Combined for 2 scoreless innings, Dory Moreta gives up that home run to Betts, all 3 runs in the 9th inning and a 1/3 of an inning before Colin Holderman. Well, he lived up to his name. He got a pair of outs out of the bullpen, and for the Pirates, they do go 4 of 11 with men in scoring position as they get to Blake Snell. 5 runs allowed over the course of 5 innings. You had Kirby Yates, Jack Dreyer, along with Edgardo Enriquez, all will be able to give you a scoreless inning, and saw lots of scoreless innings handed out by the Tampa Bay Rays. They take it to the Cleveland Guardians, 4-2 the final, and all of a sudden the Rays are back to 71-69. For the Guardians, their lone form of offense, 2 solo home runs off of Pete Fairbanks, as you had Jose Ramirez get his 27th home run season, Kyle Manzardo his 25th, as Ryan Pepio, not a ton of length, but good start here. 5 scoreless innings, Brian Baker, Garrett Clevenger, Edwin Uceta all end a scoreless inning, and then Fairbanks gives up those solo home runs in the 9th inning, but the Rays still able to get the job done because they got to Logan Allen, who gave up 4 runs, 3 of which were earned in 5 innings, and Matt Festa, he had a fiesta giving you a scoreless inning, and Kobe Allard, he was able to end 2 scoreless innings of his own. For the Kansas City Royals, they do find a way to be able to get a win against the Angels 4-3 to avoid the sweep there, as for Kyle Hendricks, pretty solid start. He gives up 2 runs at 6 innings, albeit both of those those runs were via solo home runs, as you had Adam Frazier get his 6th home run season and Vinny Pasquantino's 29th. But then for the Royals, all 4 of the runs come on solo home runs. Bobby Witt Jr. off of Ryan Zefrian, 21st home run season, and Jose Fermin gives one up to Salvador Perez, 24th home run season. Fermin, a solo home run given up in his inning work. Zefrian, a solo home run given up in his inning work. And Noah Cameron did give up a home run to Luis Renifo in the first inning, 8th home run in the campaign, but settled down from there. Gives up 3 runs in 5 innings. From there, Jonathan Bolin, 2 scoreless innings. Lucas Ercich, Carlos Estevez. They're both able to lend a scoreless inning. And the Yankees, they were able to lend a lot of offense against the Houston Astros, 8-4 the final. As for the Yankees, Carlos Rodon, 6th straight start with 2 runs or fewer allowed. 2 runs, one of which was earned, given up in 6 innings. From there, Luke Weaver gives up a solo home run in 2/3 of an inning of work. Fernando Cruz, for outside the bullpen scoreless, and David Benner does not poop the pen, though he does give up a run in an inning, but more than enough to be able to get the job done there, as Christian Javier does give up a home run to Ryan McMahon, 19th home run season, and Trent Grisham, home run number 30 of the campaign, as Grisham goes deep off of Caleb Ward, who gave up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning. Christian Javier not long for this game, 4 runs allowed in 4 1/3 innings. Anya de los Santos, 5 outside the bullpen scoreless. Craig Kimbrell, 8 scoreless inning, and you did have 4 outside the bullpen scoreless from the young gun in Jaden Murray in his MLB debut. And for the Astros, pair of home runs, Yordan Alvarez, 5th home run season, and Mr. Isu Sanchez, his 13th home run of the campaign. And I do have to have this podcast up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so I'm doing this as we are in the bottom of the 9th inning, but as of right now, the White Sox are taking it to the Minnesota Twins, 11-7, so Twins would need to score 4+ runs here in the 9th inning to be able to change things around. As for the White Sox, they did a nice job of being able to get to the overall pitching of the Twins, as Kyle Teel got his 6th home run season, and then you had Colson Montgomery, his 17th home run of the campaign. Those both come off the bullpen, as Davis gives up the home run to Montgomery, 2 runs, one of which was earned, given up in his inning work, and then the man that supplied the other home run, Travis Adams, he went for 1 inning, and he gave up 4 runs. Taj Junkel and Milton Bradley, well, he's been playing games on us, gave 4 runs over the course of 5 innings. Genesis Cabrera gives up a run in an inning, and Michael Tonkin scoreless inning. And for the Twins, relatively solid offense here. They go 4 of 13 with men in scoring position, and they did a nice job of being able to get to the bulk guy in Jonathan Cannon, who gave up 5 runs in 2 1/3 innings. Frazier Allard as the opener, 4 outside the bullpen scoreless, and then Tyler Alexander does give up 2 runs in the course of his 2 innings, including a home run, as Matt Wallner gets his 21st home run in the campaign. Wolfman Gonzalez, 4 outside the bullpen scoreless. Grant Taylor, 8 scoreless inning, and right now Steven Wilson is looking to be able to close it out. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in baseball right now, overall for the season, it's been more unders than overs, but if you look at the last 7 days, it's been very overwhelming, including this White Sox versus Twins game, 48 overs to 41 unders, so over 53.5% hit rate to the over, and favorites are really struggling, assuming that the White Sox win this game, 44 and 47 on the money line over the last 7 days. Meanwhile, in the last 30 days, hitting at more like 56.3%, 219 and 170 on the money line, while the over rate is a little bit over 53%, 199 overs to 175 unders. And if you're looking at the season to date, the under rate still hovering right around about 50.9%, 1,022 unders to 985 overs, and the money line favorites hitting at about 56.7%, 1,178 and 900. So that's what we're seeing in baseball right now, and that's what we all got on Thursday. Now let's take a look at this murky playoff picture with one of our good friends, Danny Vietti, who does great work over at CBS Sports next right here on the Baseball Betting Show. Myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back back here, love you, Las Vegas, for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Danny Vietti aboard. He does such great work over at CBS Sports, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. On top of that, he does a great job with his own podcast, the Wake and Rake podcast. You're able to find that wherever you get this fine podcast, as he does that with Bill Middlebrooks, a World Series champion with the Boston Red Sox. Unfortunately, he did not win a World Series with the Brewers. Hopefully this year for the Brewers, but that said, he does a great job on that podcast as well. And to be able to follow Danny on the old Twitter/X, that's simple enough. His first and last name, Danny Vietti, Vietti on that last name. And Danny, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, always happy to join, Greg. Appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you, Danny. And Danny, I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast for the last 2 months, and I'm going to bring it up again. Man, does it feel wide open in baseball right now. We're doing this in early September, and I just want to get your thoughts on the landscape of the playoff picture, because this just feels like one of those years where, as of right now, anyone trying to predict the playoffs is doing a little bit of a fool's errand, because I think that it's all going to be based on which team gets hot at the right time.
No doubt. Look at the American League, right? Your best teams right now, as the standings show, as I'm speaking here, Toronto Blue Jays own the number 1 overall seed. And you're thinking, okay, number 1 seed, probably one of the better teams, going to be tough to beat. Well, they're 35-35 away from home. So they're a 500 ball club away from Rogers Center. Not to mention, they're 5-5 across their last 10 games. They're about 14th in long balls this year. Elite batting average. They lead all of Major League Baseball as a team in batting average. So they put the ball in play, and they do a nice job with runners in scoring position. But again, a 500 ball club away from Rogers Center. Not to mention, they have had an atrocious bullpen really for most of the season, but especially over this last month. Hoffman has just not been as consistent as they hoped, as they signed him as a free agent after this last season. He hasn't been the closer that they hoped. So this is the supposed number 1 seed in the American League, the supposed best team in the American League. They look beatable. Right after that, Detroit Tigers. Ever since the All-Star break, they've been hovering around a 500 team for the most part. They were as hot as heck for the first half of the season. They can really pitch, but their hitters have really gone cold, especially with Kerry Carpenter in particular, a guy who made his first All-Star team this year, but he's gone cold. So the lineup really hasn't been as consistent as it was in the first half. So those are your 2 best supposed teams according to the records in the American League. You head over to the National League. Milwaukee Brewers have been the best team in Major League Baseball, especially in recent days, without a doubt. But you look at what they are on paper, they don't jump out at you. They certainly have a pitching staff that is worthy of winning a World Series. Peralta, Priester, Woodruff, Mizorowski, and Quintana. That's a good enough rotation to go on a run. But you look at how this lineup is put together. Terang, Churio, Yelich, Contreras, that's at the top of their lineup. It's very stout, very solid. After that, it's your Freliks, your Andrew Vaughns, your Joey Ortiz's of the world. It's kind of mix and match platoon at the bottom of that order. And that's your number 1 seed in the National League. And then you go down the list. The Phillies, they lost their ace in Zach Wheeler. The Dodgers haven't been consistent in the second half. I'm going on, and I'm getting long-winded here. Point being is exactly what you mentioned, in that your best seeds in the American League and the National League, all of them look very beatable as we inch closer to this postseason.
Oh, they certainly do, and I just feel like this is such a wide-open season, and I know you've come on the podcast in past years and have talked about how health is just so paramount for these teams as well, and I feel like it's going to be even bigger this year, because you talked about with the Phillies with Zach Wheeler now being out, and keep in mind, they have Jose Alvarado back in that bullpen now, but they're not going to have him in the postseason, as we know with the LA Dodgers. If they're fully healthy, I believe that they're the best team in all of baseball. Will they be? That's a big giant question, and I feel like for a lot of these teams, it's going to be hinging upon the health of some of these guys. And you mentioned the Blue Jays a little bit before. Shane Bieber perhaps being a little bit of a swing man could be big for them as well.
It was a huge pickup at the deadline, and there were question marks of how healthy is Bieber. He hasn't pitched real time at the major league level in 2 years. So Toronto, they're actually really put together a lot similarly as the number 1 seed in the National League, the Milwaukee Brewers. They have a really, really good rotation, and they're a lineup that doesn't necessarily rely on the long ball as much as they do contact, and they do a nice job with runners in scoring position. I'll tell you what, who hasn't really gotten as much attention as he probably should is George Springer at the top of their lineup. I mean, he's putting together his best season probably since his couple seasons with Houston when he was an MVP candidate. A 305 batting average this season, a 550 slug, a 396 on base percentage, 26 home runs to go along with it. and 71 RBIs. He's really set the table for the rest of this Toronto lineup. And you have Bo Bichette in your 4-hole. He's not exactly a guy that is going to launch 30 home runs in the season. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., a guy with immense pop, but really across his career, I think he's hit over 35 home runs once in his career. So a guy certainly with pop, but it's just a lineup that's very unique in that they don't necessarily strike out very much, but they get guys on base and they're very clutch in high leverage situations. So Toronto, a very good ball club, but again, very beatable, especially with Hoffman and Dominguez and that bullpen struggling.
Yep, absolutely. I am right there with you. As Andy Vietti, who does great work over at CBS Sports and the Wake and Rake podcast, joined me on the Baseball Betting Show, and we've rattled off how these teams with the best records in the league are all very flawed. And I want to touch upon this because I feel like you might be in sort of the same boat that I am. The teams that I'm liking the most right now in terms of the way that they played over the last few weeks are teams that are fighting for playoff spots. Like, I don't think that the San Francisco Giants are going to be able to do enough to be able to get a wild card spot, but all of a sudden they're playing some good baseball. The Texas Rangers, when Nathan Eovaldi went down, they looked dead in the water, but somehow, some way, they've been able to rattle off a few wins. So that series in Arizona, not necessarily great. And I mean, speak of which, the Arizona Diamondbacks, not going to make the playoffs, but they've been playing some good baseball as well. It just feels very strange in that I don't feel great about the playoff teams right now, but those teams hovering around 500 seem to be the teams that are actually right now playing the best baseball.
There's a couple that concern me, though, starting with Seattle. And I was as high on Seattle after the trade deadline as perhaps any other team, just because I loved what that front office did in adding Naylor and adding Eugenio Suarez to a lineup that already possessed Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez and Randy Arozarena. But what gives me concern with Seattle in particular is their strikeout percentage has pretty much maintained the same. And it makes sense, right? Eugenio Suarez has had one of the higher strikeout rates in baseball since ever coming up to the big leagues. That's who he is. He hits the ball out of the yard, but he strikes out a ton. Randy Arozarena, great all-star caliber hitter, but a guy who has had a top 5 strikeout percentage ever since coming up to the big leagues. Another guy who is susceptible to striking out. Cal Raleigh, a guy that's going to hit potentially 60 home runs this season, depending on how this last month goes. One of the MVP candidates of this year, but another guy that has a high strikeout percentage. Julio Rodriguez has had a high strikeout percentage. Seattle, I think, has a rotation that is capable of winning a World Series. I think they have a lineup that has as much power as anybody in baseball. But the problem is they don't put the ball in play enough to be able to take advantage of the runners that they're putting on base. And when I go into the postseason, I look at which teams I like to go on a playoff run. I look at a number of different categories, but number one is strikeout percentage, because we see a lot of teams in the regular season rely on the long ball. One team in particular comes to mind, obviously, is the Yankees in recent years. The Yankees have done well in the regular season over this last half decade. They've gotten into a postseason, a lot of it because they can slug and hit the ball out of the yard. A lot of the same way that they're succeeding this season. But you look at their strikeout percentages. You look at what they're doing with runners in scoring position. Hitting with runners in scoring position, pitching in high leverage situations, and starting pitching depth. Those are 3 categories I really look at and see which teams are going to have success come postseason time. The Mariners, the Yankees, both those teams have had question marks with putting necessary contact and hitting with runners in scoring position. Similarly, for whatever reason, the Dodgers haven't had consistent baseball in this second half, hitting in high leverage situations and pitching in high leverage situations. So those are the 3 categories I look at, and both those teams, as talented as they are, they have not been getting it done with runners in scoring position.
And I am right there with you on Seattle being a little bit of an all-or-nothing lineup with the way that they hit the deep ball. Heck, I go back to the game that we saw on Tuesday with them hitting all those home runs against the Tampa Bay Rays, but still not being able to get the win in that one. That is a little bit concerning, in my opinion, as well. So that's certainly something that I identify. And this is a team that we really haven't talked about too much, but I feel like they might be a little bit pesky out there in the American League, and that'd be the Boston Red Sox, because what we have noticed a lot of this year is that these bullpens have been shaky, but arguably Aroldis Chapman has been by far the best closer in all baseball. He has been about as good as I can remember him being. Like, this is the Aroldis Chapman that we all know and love. The pitching has really been able to get the job done for them. I love the way that Brian Bayo has been a nice compliment to Garrett Crochet and all those guys. And even though they don't have that main masher, especially with Wilder Abreu on the injury list, I feel like this is a team that has a makeup of one that could be able to wreak some havoc out there in the American League that we just mentioned it. It feels like it's as wide open as it gets. Mets.
I'll be honest with you. If you asked me the same question 48 hours ago, I was 100% on board the Red Sox bandwagon. I like the young players have stepped up and really taken on their roles and succeeded with them. Losing Roman Anthony for potentially the rest of the season with this oblique injury, that cannot be overlooked. This is a guy that has an 859 OPS, 292 batting average, 4 stolen bases, 32 ribs, 8 homers in just 71 games. A 3.1 B WAR to go along with it in just 71 games. One of the best WARs in baseball since making his MLB debut. Losing him at the top of that lineup, that is a huge, huge loss. Now, to your point, the pitching rotation and the bullpen has been phenomenal really all season long for the Red Sox. Crochet's been a Cy Young candidate. Bio's been phenomenal, especially in this second half. One of the better pitchers in the second half. Lucas Giolito, similarly, one of the better pitchers in this second half. Bullpen-wise, Chapman has probably been the best reliever in all of baseball, completely turning back time. Whitlock has been great. Weiser's been great. Their bullpen has been good throughout. What concerns me is these young guys have come up and they've had roles placed upon them, and they have dominated their roles. But now, with Roman Anthony now being potentially done for the season, what is it going to do to the depth of this team? Because their depth is really what has helped this team get this far. The young talent that this team and this organization has had, when someone has gone down, such as Alex Bregman when he left with his injury, they were able to bring up some young guys to help with depth. Now that Anthony is down, and this is just part of baseball, it's injuries. But now that Anthony is down, what is it going to do to the top of that lineup? Who is going to take the bull by the horns and take on that leadoff position that Roman Anthony has been hitting in? That's the biggest question for me, because I like this team. I like the vibes of this team in particular. But the loss of Roman Anthony really puts a question mark on this team.
Yep, absolutely. And with Roman Anthony, he wasn't necessarily hitting for a ton of power, but just the way that he was able to find a way to be able to move the line, that was solid. Can't pronounce his last name, but the password is a guy that they just called up, so we're going to be looking at that. We'll just continue to call him the passwords, that way I don't mess up the last name, but you know what? That's going to be a fun team to be taking a look at, and I do want to just lend this question to you as well, because it's a wide open season. We have just talked about the things that we are liking and not liking with a lot of teams, and it just feels like it's a rough landscape in general. Just if you're looking at the National League though right now, because we've talked a lot about the American League, is there one team in particular in the National League that you feel a little bit of faith in to be able to make a run? Because we just have so many question marks with it, and I go back to it. If the Dodgers are at full health, I still think that they're the team to beat in the National League. We just don't know if that's going to be the case, so especially with Shohei Ohtani getting scratched from his start on Wednesday.
The Mets lineup has been hot over this last month for sure. I mean, Juan Soto has completely come alive. Everyone's saying that this is a down year for Soto, and he's on track for 30-plus home runs and a 900-plus OPS. So the Mets lineup is still very, very good. It really comes down to pitching with the Mets. They have relied so much on their bullpen because their starting pitching hasn't been able to pitch deep enough in the ball games. It's just been so taxing on Diaz, and I know the newly acquired Rogers and Helsley, but really the Brooks Rayleys of the world and the Staniks of the world, they've really had a lot of pressure on them because their starters haven't been able to get it done. But I think the Mets lineup is capable of hitting with anybody. The Dodgers are certainly dangerous. Just on paper, probably, like you said, probably the best team on paper, not just in the National League, but across Major League Baseball. But you can't rely on half their rotation was on the shelf with injuries. You can't rely on it and just all of a sudden expect these guys to be in their Cy Young forms when they come back from injury. It's understandable that these starters that are coming back from injury are going to have a little fatigue and a little rust on them. I think the Cubs lineup is fantastic, but have really hit the skids. I think Cincinnati, I know they're 4.5 back, but with that rotation and now Hunter Green healthy to go along with them, I think if the Reds can somehow find a way to sneak in, they could surprise someone. But with 4.5 games back in the wild card and less than a month left in the season remaining, it's going to be a very uphill climb for them. So I think the National League it's a recurring theme in this conversation, but it's as open as anything right now because, like we mentioned, Brewers are great. They don't scare you on paper. Phillies are great. They lost their ace, and they're going to be without their closer. The Dodgers are phenomenal, but a lot of rust to be shaken off. And then Cubs have been pretty weak in the second half. The Padres have been kind of up and down. A very good roster, but not as consistent. 3-10 in their last 10 games. And the Mets, similarly, just not as consistent. So it's going to be a fun postseason. If I know anything, I'm not going to predict who's going to win the World Series or anything, but I can guarantee you it's going to be a wild and wacky postseason just because of how much parity there is in baseball.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like the old Gladiator movie. We are going to be certainly entertained. What we're going to get, we have no idea, but it will be entertaining. And I know you, Danny, are going to be following it every step of the way. You do great work over at CBS Sports. You do great work with your podcast, the Wake and Rake podcast, and so much more. So love to give people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow on social media and other platforms.
So much postseason content, baseball content, storyline content at CBS Sports on your social channels and at Danny Vietti on my personal account.
Absolutely. And Danny does a tremendous job of taking a look at this great sport. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Danny for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the Vietti Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by our good friend Danny Vietti, who does great work over at CBS Sports, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Danny for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the National League games first, then the American League games, any intra-league games. Those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. And we do start out with a day game out there at Wrigley Field. It is the Cubs playing OC Washington Nationals. 901, 902 on the card as Javier Assad is on the bump for the Cubs, and Jake Irvin goes for Washington. Right now, the opening total I'm seeing is a 9.5. The over is -120, and the under is even. And the Cubs are between a -210 to a -233 favorite, and between +185 to a +195 is that number on Washington. Most places do not have a run line up. The lone run line that I was seeing over at FanDuel was having this one right in that neighborhood of about a -120 or so. And if we do get to a -120, that would be essentially my max lay here. I would like to see this get to a -115 or so, but that said, I did set my total at 8.7 because right now it looks like the wind is going to be blowing a little bit more directionally. If it is going to be this case, I will be looking at the under because it is a little bit of a murky forecast right now because it's supposed to be blowing out in the early AM, and then by the time the game starts, it is going to be blowing a little bit more directionally, and it is going to be a pretty heavy wind, but also things are cooling down out there at Wrigley, so on the 9.5, I'm going to be in on the under, even though Jake Irvin has given up 3+ runs in 6 straight starts since the beginning of the month of August, 1.8 home runs per 9 innings, 5.42 ERA, feeling dependent more around about a 4.66, so he's been less than savory, and so is this bullpen of the Washington Nationals, which has been better over the last few weeks. We'll give these guys a little bit of credit, but still dead last in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Just so many guys that you can't trust in this bullpen, as you've got Shunkuski Ogasara, I always say that name incorrectly, Jackson Rutledge, Orlando Robalta, Edward Salazar, all these guys, they're posting up an ERA well above a 5. For the Nationals, they are averaging closer to 4.5 runs per game away from home compared to more like 4 runs per game at home, and CJ Abrams has been pounding out a lot of home runs on the road. 14 of 17 home runs have come them away from home. He's hitting about a 265. James Wood is giving you good Wood, 355 on base, 27 home runs. And you've had Josh Bell since the beginning of the month of July, hitting in that neighborhood of about a 260. He has been able to supply the team with 16 home runs. You could use a little bit more of the young guys, though. Dalen Lyle's starting to step up. He's been giving you about a 320 on base, but I mean, some of these guys like Andres Chaparro, a guy that's been injured for quite a bit of the season, Dylan Cruz, these sorts of guys give you less than a 300 on base. Brady House, you just need to get a bit more out of them. And for the Cubs, since the All-Star break, they have been a bottom 5 team in the big leagues in terms of run production. So have the Nationals. The Nationals have actually been 29th out of 30 teams in terms of run production ever since the All-Star break. Cubs have been averaging only about 4 runs per game with Pete Armstrong, Seiya Suzuki just not giving you too much. They've been stuck on 27 and 28 home runs respectively for quite a while. Dansby Swanson continues to hit about a 250 with 21 home runs. Kyle Tucker has been cold recently, but still for the season has been able to give you about a 380 on base. He's been able to slug out those home runs, but the home run power has been way down. This has been a bottom 10 team in the big leagues in terms of home runs ever since the All-Star break, as Michael Busch has really been one of your main home run hitters. He and Matt Shaw actually lead the team in home runs post All-Star break. Shaw has actually hit 9 home runs ever since break, so he's been rock solid, but we've seen a lot of these guys crater a little bit, but this is still a relatively solid bullpen for the Cubs that's in the top half of the big leagues in terms of ERA. Have a lot of guys who have been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. Brad Keller, Daniel Palencia, Drew Pomeranz, Caleb Theobar. These guys have all been rock solid, and for Javier Assad, it's a small sample size. He's only made 4 starts this season with a 4.05 ERA. He's only getting 4.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Career average is more like 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, giving up 0.9 home runs, about 2.3 walks per 9 innings. I do think that he'll be able to maintain this relatively solid ERA, so I'm looking at the under, and with the Cubs, would like to see this get down to a minus 115 or so with regards to run line. We'll see where it goes overnight, but do anticipate being on that Cubs run line. 903, 904 on the card. The Pittsburgh Pirates playoffs to the Milwaukee Brewers. Quinn Priester goes for the Brewers, and you don't mess with it. Johan Oviedo is on the bump for the Pirates. Pirates who find themselves as underdogs between plus 118 to a plus 125, minus 134 to a minus 144 is that number on the Brewers with a total of 8.5. The over is minus 110 to a minus 115. Under is minus 105 to a minus 110, and with the Brewers, I did set them on the money line at a minus 136. So that minus 135 is my max lay, but I'm going to be willing to dive in here for Quinn Priester. He has been very good in terms of just being able to keep things out in front of him and not truly hurting himself. I do think that he's doing for a lot of regression. 320 ERA, 429 fielding dependent, as he's not too much of a power guy, 7.2 strikeouts per 9 innings, but only 1.1 home runs and 3 walks allowed per 9 innings, so has been sturdy there, and he has given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of his last 5 starts. Was dealing with a little bit of a wrist sort of situation. He had to have his last start pushed back a little bit, and in that last start, he showed that he was just fine, so no real concerns there. And Johan Oviedo, ever since he got put back into the starting rotation for the Pittsburgh Pirates, has actually been very rock solid for the team. He's only made 4 starts this far this season. In his first start, he just clearly was not right in that one, but you take a look at his last 3 starts, not necessarily a lot of length. He's won a combined 14 innings, but he's only given up 4 runs in that time span, and the swing and miss stuff is way up for him. For Oviedo, overall for his career, about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's got 20 strikeouts in 15 innings this far this season, so that's been pretty rock solid for a Pirates team that has been solid in terms of their bullpen. You've had Braxton Ashcraft have to be elevated to a starter, so some of those longer guys, they are no longer available for the team, but you do have a pair of guys that have been doing a very good job of holding it down, at Isaac Manson along with Dennis Santana. Both give you a sub 250 ERA. Chase Shogurt has been down at the minor league level, so they haven't looked at him. Mike Burrows has been a little bit of a piggyback slash a long guy. Evan Sisk is someone that they're probably going to be looking to a little bit. He's got a 5 ERA, but has a little bit of upside there. And for the Pirates, they've been better with their offense recently, but still overall for the season, dead last in the big leagues in terms of run production, and only have 3 guys on the roster with over 8 home runs: Andrew McCutchen, O'Neal Cruz, and Brian Reynolds. And O'Neal Cruz has been in and out of the lineup over the last few weeks. He's clearly been dealing with some injuries, and for Alexander Canario, Jared Trollo, Lovar Piguero, Henry Davis, you got a lot of guys, and you get 222 or lower. They DFA Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, so that's an issue. You've got Nick Gonzalez hitting about a 280, and then on the other end for the Milwaukee Brewers, this team is averaging about 5.6 runs per game away from home. That is number 1 in all of baseball. Not necessarily a ton of power, though. Jackson Chourio coming back, that helps out the team, as that now gives them 2 different players with above 17 home runs this season, as Yelich is your main man, 27 home runs, about a 350 on base, but that's the thing. You just have so many guys that are providing a great on base, as William Contreras, Al Frelick, Bryce Terang, Isaac Collins, all these at 350 on base. In a Brewers uniform, and a Brewers uniform only, Andrew Vaughn, also at 350 on base, was miserable with the White Sox, and that's has been going downward a little bit, but Caleb Durbin has been stepping up, give you about a 330 on base. Andrew Monasterio has been pretty rock solid as well. And for the Brewers, the bullpen has had their issues over the last few weeks ever since Trevor McGill hit the injury list, but still overall pretty rock solid as likes of Aaron Ashby, Abner Uribe, a little bit of a long guy in DL Hall, along with Jared Kanan, Grant Anderson. These are all guys give you a sub 340 ERA. I know that Anderson is dealing with a little bit of injury as well, so that's been a tad bit of an issue, but overall I do think that the Brewers should be able to go out there, get the job done. I do think that Priester's doing for a bit of regression. I do think that the Brewers get to Oviedo. I semi-tell it at 8.8, like the over, and for the Brewers, we'll lay up to a minus 135 on that money line. 905, 906 on the card. The Mets are on the road against the Cincinnati Reds, and yes, we're on to Cincinnati. It's on to Andrew Abbott getting the start for them, and David Peterson, great name, on the bump for the Mets. Mets who find themselves as minus 120 to minus 126 favorites, plus 104 to plus 110 is that number on the Reds with a total of 8.5. Over is between minus 120 to a minus 130. Under is between even and plus 110, and for the Reds, I did set them on the money line at a minus 104. I am going to be willing to lay it for Andrew Abbott. It has been a season which he has been just really going out there time and time again and getting the job done. I do have a little bit of concern here with that 265 ERA, 363 fielding dependent, not a power pitcher, with only about 8.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, which ironically enough, David Peterson, also 8.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he does a good job of just not hurting himself. He has given up only 1 home run and 2.5 walks per 9 innings, so really do love what he's been able to bring to the table, and additionally, he is backed up by a bullpen that has been okay. Emilio Pagan gives up too many deep balls, but Tony Santillan have been able to give you sub 350 ERA. We've seen Brent Suter have some issues a little bit, and Graham Ashcraft has been a little bit up and down and banged up, but overall, these guys have been able to do a relatively solid job, and for Abbott, in 16 out of his last 21 starts, he has given up 2 earned runs or fewer, and for Peterson, 363 ERA, that actually goes down to more like a 327 away from him. He's only been giving up a little bit over a half home run per 9 innings, the 3.5 walks per 9, that's a little bit of an issue, but he's backed up by a bullpen that since August 1 has a 4.66 ERA, as Ryan Helsley just has not been what the team was hoping for. Man, he has really been pooping the bed for this team. Now, you have had Gregory Soto pitch actually quite well for this team. I don't know how long lasting that's going to be, but he and Tyler Rogers, since getting picked up, have been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. They've been dealing with a few injuries, and Reed Garrett has had some ups and downs when he's been out there on the field. Justin Hagenman has actually been solid with a 3.05 ERA, and then you know what to expect out of Edwin Diaz. He'll make things adventurous, but he'll eventually be able to get you out of it. But for the Mets, it has been a lineup that has been a little bit top heavy throughout the season. Bottom of the lineup is starting to produce, so as you've got Jeff McNeil, Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, all now give you at least 12 home runs. McNeil's up to a 360 on base. Vientos and Beatty hitting between about a 242 to 252, and you've got Brandon Nimmo up to 22 bombs, 335 on base. Francisco Lindor, 335 on base with 26 bombs. Pete Alonso is starting to get hot with 33 home runs at a 350 on base. And Juan Soto, I know a lot of people like to ridicule him, but a 399 on base with 37 home runs, that's a pretty darn solid season. And for the Cincinnati Reds, it's not necessarily one guy that has been the trigger man for this offense, but they've been one of the best offenses in all baseball ever since the All-Star break, as it's just consistently guys that are moving the line and getting on base. Ellie De La Cruz is right now leading the way with 19 home runs. The only other guy with over 13 home runs is Spencer Steer with 17, and he's only been hitting about a 337 for the season, but you've had quite a few guys be able to step up. In a Reds uniform, Cabrian Hayes, 345 on base. Gavin Lux, TJ Friedel, between about a 355 to a 370 on base. You've been able to have Miguel Andujar, when he's been out there on the field, as he's out with injury, be able to find a way to move the line. Navalny Marte, 12 home runs, hitting at 292. Austin Hayes has been pretty solid as well. So I do think that the Reds should be a slight favorite here. I think that Abbott is doing for a little bit of regression, but Peterson pitches so a little bit more contact than I'd like as well. So somebody tell it at 8.8. I like the over and the Reds on the money line, as I did set them as a slim minus 104 favorite. 907, 908 on the card. The Philadelphia Phillies are on the road against the Miami Marlins. As for the Marlins, we do know that Christopher Sanchez is going to be getting the start for them, and right now CBS Sports is putting up Valentin Beloso as the projected starter, and that to me translates to a bullpen game for the Miami Marlins, so I have handicapped as such, and in pretty much a bullpen game against the Philadelphia Phillies, I set the Phillies at a minus 192 on the money line. I'd be willing to go up to about a minus 120 with regards to this run line. Minus 122 is what I officially set it at, and then we need at least plus 190 193 to take a shot on the Marlins. And then I made a total of a 7.9, so 7.5 or less. I'm in on the over, an 8 or higher to the under. Now, we don't necessarily know what we're going to get fully out of the Miami Marlins. I would think that Beloso, even if he's not the starter, he'll probably pitch a few innings. He's got like a 3.91 ERA, has been a starter throughout his career, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but also has been giving up too much of the deep ball. Nothing too special, but nothing too awful there. And then it is a Marlins bullpen that has been in the upper half of the big leagues in terms of ERA since June 1st. You've got the likes of Blake Bakar, Kay Gibson, Ronnie Enriquez, who've been able to give you sub 350 ERA. So the long guys have been relatively solid. They do have a lot of guys that give you multiple innings, but Christopher Sanchez just keeps on rocking and rolling. 266 ERA, 260 fielding dependent, half a home run allowed per 9 innings, 9.5 strikeouts, 2.2 walks allowed per 9 innings. This guy has been absolutely magnificent. And for Christopher Sanchez, he has still been a relatively rock-solid pitcher on the road as well. The ERA does go up to 2.99, but 4 home runs allowed in 90 and a third innings away from home. Miami, one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks in all of baseball. The Marlins are in the bottom 3 in the National League in terms of run production at home, and they're dealing with an injury to Kyle Sowers, their main masher, 25 home runs and a 370 on base. You have had Augustin Ramirez give you 19 home runs, but hitting for just a 230. Xavier Edwards at the top has been about a 280, but he's been a little bit cold in terms of getting on base recently. Liam X continues to give you about a 350 on base. Javier Sonja, Connor Norby, a lot of guys out of Lopez, hitting between about a 238 to a 250, so these guys have been relatively okay. And Jacob Arce, since they called him up, he's been giving you over a 400 on base. Flip side for the Philadelphia Phillies, it's been a little bit of an up and down bullpen, but getting back, Jose Alvarado is a nice spark for them. Won't have him for the postseason, but they've got him for the regular season. He's had a little bit of shakiness since coming off of the suspension with about a 3.33 ERA, but David Robertson, Tanner Banks, Matt Strahm, Ryan Kerkering, along with Yohan Duran, these guys have been able to give you a sub 320 ERA. For the Phillies, this is an offense that does take a little bit of a nosedive when they're away from home rather than at home. At home, they are a top 2 team in the big leagues with about 5.35 runs per game, only about 4.2 runs per game away from home. That's in the bottom half of all baseball, but Kyle Schwarber continues to give you Schwar bombs as he's up to 49 home runs, 366 on base. Trey Turner, 36 home bags, hitting for 300. He's been solid. Don't have a lot of power outside of Schwarber, though. 23 home runs out of Bryce Harper. He's been able to give you about a 360 on base. To Castellanos, he's been able to give you about 16 home runs as well, but you could use a little bit more there. Max Kepler's only hitting about a 215, but guys like Armando Sosa, Alec Boehm have been able to move line. So with the Phillies, I'd be willing to go up to about a minus 120 on that run line, set their money line at a minus 192, so need at least plus 183 to take a shot on the Marlins, and then set my total at 7.9, 7.5 or less, in on the over, 8 or higher. The under, 909, 910 on the card. It is the Giants on the road against the St. Louis Cardinals, as it is one Mr. Connor Seymour on the bump for the Giants, and Michael McGreevy goes for the Cardinals. Cardinals are between minus 110 to minus 115 favorites, even money to minus 105, and around San Francisco, 8.5 is the total. The under is minus 110 to a minus 115, over is minus 105 to a minus 110, and with McGreevy and the Cardinals, I did set them on the money line at a minus 123, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Michael McGreevy. He has been very much pitching to a lot of contact, but is really good at not hurting himself. He's only given up 0.8 home runs at 1.4 walks per 9 innings, albeit that comes with 5.2 strikeouts per 9 innings, so he's rolling the dice a little bit with regards to the home run power, and has given up 3+ runs in 3 out of his last 4 starts, but he does get to go up against a San Francisco Giants team that overall for the season, offense has not necessarily been magnificent, but we know this about San Francisco. They get much better away from home rather than at home. About 4 runs per game at home, a little bit over 4.6 runs per game away from home, and on the road they have been a top 12 team in terms of run production, and all of a sudden Rafael Devers, who was having a miserable run early on in his San Francisco Giants tenure, he's been able to explode for this team recently. For our good friend Rafael Devers, overall for the season, he has been able to give this team in a Giants uniform now 15 home runs at a 356 on base. This is more of what you're looking for out of him now. The catcher spot has been rough. Tyler Fitzgerald had to get sent down to the minor leagues. Luis Matos, a 275 on base. You need a little bit more there, and Willie Adames is still not really paying off for this team. He's up to 26 home runs, but hitting overall for the season about a 230. But Jung-Ho Lee is moving the line, hitting for about a 265. Eloy Ramos, a 340 on base with 16 home runs. Matt Chapman is up to 20 bombs with a 345 on base, and for the Giants, even though they traded away Camilo Udval, Tyler Rogers, this has been a pretty steady and rock-solid bullpen. They're still number 2 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. You have the likes of Keaton Wynn, Joey Lucchesi, Jose Bito, but able to give you a sub-3.5 ERA, and then Randy Rodriguez has been your main man. He's been able to supply the team with a sub-2 ERA, but now he gets a 60-day injury list, so that is your main reliever, but you'll Piguero, ever since they called him up, he has actually been very rock solid for this team. And then for the St. Louis Cardinals, it is a bullpen that even without Ryan Helsley has been solid, and frankly, they probably should be fortunate that they don't have Ryan Helsley with the way that he has been pitching right now, as you got the likes of Jojo Romero, Kyle Leahy, Matt Savanson, Riley O'Brien. These guys give you a sub-305 ERA. The problem for the Cardinals is they have been a bottom 5 offense in terms of run production ever since the All-Star break. You do have Wilson Contreras, who's been able to supply 20 home runs at a 340 on base. Alec Burleson is sitting at 285 with 16 home runs. They've been without Nolan Arenado, but that really doesn't impact them too much. But that said, the young guys just have not been able to really step up for the team. Victor Scott is dealing with injury, but he, Pedro Baez, Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, all these guys in a 228 or lower. Nathan Church has been pretty miserable in a small sample size, so that's been a bit of an issue, though. Ivan Herrera up to about 367 on base, 13 home runs at 310 at-bats. He's been relatively solid, and I do think that this team is going to be able to find a way to be able to get to Carson Seymour, who's been a guy that has been utilized both out of the bullpen and as a starter for the San Francisco Giants. It's been a little bit of mix and match with him this year. 4.74 ERA overall for the campaign. In his first start against the Baltimore Orioles, he gave up 4 runs over the course of 3 innings. Wasn't necessarily so savory there. He has been at the major league level really giving it up with like 2.9 home runs allowed per 9 innings. If you look at what he did over in the PCL over at Sacramento, was posting up a 3.86 ERA there, which that's actually relatively solid. He was giving up 4.5 walks per 9 innings. The command is an issue, and with the Giants this year, about 4 walks per 9 innings. So do need to fade him a little bit here, and I do think that the Cardinals are going to be able to get to him as coach. Semi-total at an 8.7, so you're at the 8.5, like the over. And for the Cardinals, one to lay up to a minus 122 on the money line. 9-11, 9-12 on the card. It is the San Diego Padres on the road against the Colorado Rockies, as Kyle Freeland is on the bump for the Rockies and Nick Pivetta is on the bump for the Padres. Right now, most places do not have this game on the board because with Kyle Freeland, he got into that scrum in which he got 0 outs at his start a few days ago, and now they're going to try to have him come back, which that's good, clean family fun right there. But I've got my handicap. I did set the Padres on the money line at a minus 208. I'm willing to go up to about a minus 135 or so with regards to this run line, and I would need at least plus 209 to take a shot on the Rockies, subject to a little bit of change because Freeland not quite confirmed yet because of the situation of it all, but did set my total here at a 10.7. 10.5 or less. I'm in on the over, a 11 or higher to the under for the Rockies. It was looking like McCabe Brown a little bit before, and for the Padres, if they do go up against McCabe Brown, that money line price goes up to more like a minus 250, and I'd probably be playing more like a minus 160 on the run line. And if you do indeed get Kyle Freeland, well, he's been posting up an ERA about a 5.5. He's now up to about 1.5 home runs allowed per 9 innings, and he'd be coming off of a 0-out start from a few days ago. So, I mean, it was pretty much a side bullpen session for him. I don't quite know what to expect if you get Kyle Freeland. And for the Colorado Rockies, this has been a team that has just been so interesting this far this season, as obviously the offense just has not been great to say the least. For the Rockies, they're dead last in terms of run production away from home, but even at home, 4.6 runs per game, that's right around about league average, and Coors Field is supposed to be a cheat code for offense. You do have quite a few guys that are in that neighborhood about a 300, as these guys are only at 299 or higher. Hunter Goodman, Jordan Beck, Mickey Moniak, Tyler Freeman, so that's been rock solid. And for Goodman, Brenton Doyle, Moniak, they all have between 10 and 11 home runs at home, but Orlando Arcia, 272 on base when he is bad at home. You just have not been able to get too much out of Kyle Farmer as well. And for the Rockies, this continues to be a team that's 29th out of 30 teams in terms of bullpen ERA. Antonio Sensatella is now the long guy for this team. That's not great to say the least. And then you've got the likes of Nick Anderson, Seth Halverson, who's been dealing with injury, Anel Shavili, a lot of guys posting up a over 4.5 ERA, though. Victor Vodnik, Jimmy Herget, both of these guys give you a sub 320 ERA, and Dugan Darnell has actually been relatively okay in this bullpen as well. But for the Padres, they are numero uno in the big leagues in terms of their bullpen ERA. Just so many guys are able to come in there and get the job done. Robert Suarez has been posting up an ERA right around 3. He's had a few blown saves this year, but all in all has been pretty steady. And then you got the likes of Jason Adam, Adrian Morejon, David Morgan, these guys who have been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. Jeremiah Estrada, he had a little bit of issue towards the early part of August, but he's back to about a 3 ERA as well. The big thing for the Padres is that this team is in the bottom 5 of the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. You do have a trio of guys with at least 19 home runs, though. Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado being the obvious ones. And with Machado, he's been giving you about a 285 average. Tatis, 370 on base. But Ramon Laureano, over 20 home runs inside between the Padres and the Orioles. Orioles. He's been able to give you over a 340 on base. Ryan O'Hearn, not providing a lot of power for the Padres, but a 350 on base ever since he got to town. Jake Cronenworth is up to about a 370 on base. Gavin Sheets has been able to supply 18 home runs, and Xander Bogaerts does a great job in terms of moving the line as well. And I do think that for the San Diego Padres, whether they are going to be going up against Freeland or if they're going to be going up against McKay Brown, they get to him. And for Nick Pivetta, you do want to have a little bit of caution that he hasn't been quite the same pitcher when he has been away from home rather than at home. And ironically enough, he had his big-time home and road splits last year when he was with the Boston Red Sox, in which he always struggled at Fenway, but that's a 3.44 road ERA, 2.39 ERA at home for Nick Pivetta. For Pivetta, he gives up only about 0.9 home runs per 9 innings at home, close to about 1.2 away from home, but still do think that the Padres should be able to go out there and get the job done. Willing to lay up to about a minus 135 on the run line. We need about a plus 210 to take a shot on the Rockies, and then 10.5 or less and on the over, 11 or higher, the under. 913, 914 on the card. The White Sox are on the road against the Detroit Tigers as Captain Jack Flaherty goes for the Tigres, and you've got Shane Smith on the bump for the White Sox. White Sox do find themselves as a pretty sizable underdog, in between plus 166 to a plus 158, anywhere between minus 180 to minus 195 is the number on Detroit. 8.5 is the total, under is minus 115, and the over is minus 105, and looking at that initial FanDuel opener in terms of laying run F with the Detroit Tigers, you're going to be getting that in the neighborhood about a plus 112, and I'd be willing to take a shot there. Plus 103 or greater is really my buy point. And with Jack Flaherty, he has had his issues in terms of giving up hard contact and giving up the deep ball, but this is still about one of the better strikeout pitchers out there in the American League, as he's been overall for the season posting up 10.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, 4.74 ERA, 3.95 fielding dependent with 3.3 walks per 9 innings, which has been rough, and he has given up 5+ runs in 3 out of his last 5 starts, including in his last start against White Sox. 5 runs allowed over the course of 4 1/3 innings. You've got a guy in Shane Smith who has not done a bad job in terms of limiting the deep ball. The big issue for him has been the walks. 3.81 ERA, 3.7 walks per 9 innings allowed, but only about 1.1 bombs per 9, closer to about a 4.42 fielding dependent. And with this Detroit Tigers bullpen, it has been one that has been, shall we say, shaky to say the least. Since the beginning of the month of June, they have been in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. I really don't know why they've had Brad Herter the last few weeks down at the minor league level. He has been rock solid for them all season long, so I mean that's been interesting to say the least. But Kyle Finnegan, ever since they picked him up, he has actually been very good in this bullpen. You've been able to get some relatively good production as well out of Bailey Horn. He's been able to give you a sub-2 ERA, albeit in a small sample size. And Troy Milton looks like a promising long guy as he will vest, and since they picked him up, Rafael Montero have been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. But for the Tigers, it's all about the balance in this lineup. They're a top 8 team in terms of run production, as you've got a lot of guys that are just supplying between 11 and 14 home runs, hitting between about a 257 to a 267. Zach McKinstry, Wencio Perez, Javi Baez, Cole Keith, Gleyber Torres, all in that fold. And then Gary Carpenter, he's been hot and cold, but still 23 home runs this season. Riley Green, he's hitting at 270 with 32 bombs. And Spencer Torkelson, on any given night, might be the only guy in the lineup hitting less than a 255, but he's been up to 28 bombs as well, so he's been able to do a tremendous job there. And then on the other end, it is a White Sox team that has been having a lot of question marks with regards to their bullpen. Mike Vasil has been pretty rock solid as a long guy. He's been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, but they had to put Dan Altavilla on the injured list. That was not great to say the least. Steven Wilson has been pretty solid. He's been able to give you about a 3 ERA, but then you have the likes of Jordan Leisure, Tyler Gilbert, Brandon Iser, who have all been providing above a 4 ERA. And for the White Sox, since the All-Star break, they've been in the upper half of the big leagues in terms of run production. If you look overall for the season, still in the bottom 10, but you have had Lennon Sosa really be able to pop off, 265 average, 19 home runs, and then a quartet of guys between 14 and 17 home runs. Miguel Vargas is on the injured list, but he's one of them. Luis Robert, Andrew Benintendi, along Colson Montgomery, and the 3 guys are healthy. Andrew Benintendi is the only of them that is hitting above a 225, so you've had some big issues there. Michael A. Taylor hitting for just a 266 on base has been an issue, though. Edgar Quiero, Kyle Teal at the catcher spot, both of these guys have been able to hit north of a 275, so interesting circumstance here. I do think that Jack Flaherty is going to be able to give you a little bit of better start. I know that things have been a little bit less than tremendous for him, but I do like his swing and miss stuff, and this is a White Sox team that's still just a little bit sketchy to say the least. And when it comes to our good friend and Mr. Shane Smith, he has been giving up a little bit more of the deep ball away from him, so I do think that the Tigers should be able to win this game by multiple runs. I'm willing to go up to a plus 105 or higher. I will be taking a shot on the Tigers on the run line, maybe a total of 80.4, so at the 8.5, I'm going to be in on the under. 9:15, 9:16 on the card. The Blue Jays are on the road against the New York Yankees. Cam Schlittler is on the bump for the Yankees, and Kevin Gausman goes for the Blue Jays. Most places have have this game initially off the board. In terms of the first opener that I saw, the Yankees were listed at a minus 138, plus 118 on the Blue Jays with a total of 8.5. Over is minus 115, and the under is minus 105. And I did set the Yankees at a minus 138. I'm using the FanDuel opener, so when it's all said and done, probably should be able to get the Yankees at a minus 130 to a minus 135, and I'll be willing to lay that. For Kevin Gausman, he's been a pretty steady guy, where the fielding independent actually matches up with the ERA for Gausman. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs, but still 1.1 home runs, 2.4 walks per 9 innings, 3.75 ERA, 3.66 fielding independent, so he's been solid with that regard. He's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 4 of his last 5 starts as well. And for Cam Schlittler, he's very much an upside guy for the Yankees, and I do think that he's going to be contributing for them during the postseason because he has been really good in terms of being able to get the whiffs, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has given up the 3.7 walks per 9, but since coming up to the big league level in 9 starts, 3 earned runs or fewer in every single one of them, so has had great consistency with that regard. Does go up against a Blue Jays team that the bullpen has went down the toilet bowl. Ever since the All-Star break, they have been in the bottom 3 in the big leagues in terms of their bullpen ERA, but if you look at the actual offensive production, they have been tremendous ever since the All-Star break. So you've got one positive and you've got one negative. As for the Blue Jays post All-Star break, I believe that they're actually now number 1 in all of baseball in terms of run scoring. George Springer has popped up with over 25 home runs, a 380 on base. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has honestly been a little bit hot and cold over the last week or two, but still has been able to give the team the 385 on base. Bo Bichette, 18 plus home runs. He's hitting above a 300. You get back to Nolan Varsho's, well, I give you about a 285 on base, but a home run every 10.5 at bats. That's rock solid as well. And for the Yankees on any given night, they're going to be trotting out their 8 of their 9 starters with at least 16 home runs. And the only reason why you don't have more out of Giancarlo Stanton is because he's been banged up all season long. Giancarlo Stanton, 18 home runs in his first 181 at bats entering into the game yesterday. And you're getting a little bit more on base out of some of the ancillary guys. Ben Rice at 335 on base. Aaron Judge obviously has been amazing, 440 on base, 43 home runs. But Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm, along Trent Grisham, all between 27 and 29 home runs. All 3 guys have given you at least a 332 on base. So they've been stable. The big concerns I have are Austin Wells and Anthony Volpe, a pair of guys with between 19 and 20 home runs, but both hitting a 220 or lower, both with about a 275 on base. And for the Yankees, this has been an up and down bullpen where David Benhart has been solid ever since he joined the team. Had that rough first week or so, but he's straightened out as he, Fernando Cruz, Jim Hill, Luke Weaver have all been able to give you a sub-3 ERA for the season. But Camilo Duvall's up on what they've hoped for, and Devin Williams has just been terrible this season. There's no question about that. Don't have a lot of reliability out of Mark Leiter Jr. And mentioned with the Toronto Blue Jays, I am for the concerns that you do have with the Yankees and their bullpen. Man, the Blue Jays have really toilet bowl with regards to their ERA. If you look overall for the season, you've had the Killer Bees and Brandon Little along with Braden Fisher both give you a sub-325 ERA, but these are a pair of guys that have had their issues recently. Brandon Little blew a big-time game against the Cincinnati Reds a few days ago, and you look post-All-Star break, Fisher, Uriel Rodriguez, Jeff Hoffman, a lot of their relievers posting up above a 450 ERA. Louis Varland, since joining the team, has an ERA above a 6, so that's a little bit of a concern. I do think that as a result, you're going to get a bit of a higher scoring game. I did sell it at 8.8, so that 8.5 I'm seeing, I'm in on the over end at a minus 137 or better. I'm going to be willing to back the Yankees on the money line. 917, 918 on the card. The Guardians are on the road against the Rays, as it is Ian Seymour on the bump for the Rays, and Gavin Williams goes for Cleveland. Cleveland is a underdog of anywhere between plus 108 to a plus 118, minus 125 to a minus 132 is that number on Tampa Bay, and the total on this game is 8.5. The under is minus 120, and the over is even. And with the Rays, I did set their money line price at a minus 131 for Ian Seymour. He has really been magnificent for this team. He's made 2 starts as far as he was a long reliever for the team, though. If you go back to his time with the AAA Durham Bulls, he was a starter at that level, and he was very rock solid, getting a lot of strikeouts, and he's done that at the big league level. Overall, between his time in the bullpen and as a starter, 297 ERA, 278 fielding dependent, 11.3 strikeouts, and 2.7 walks per 9 innings, and in his 2 starts, just 1 run allowed across 10 innings. Gavin Williams, meanwhile, 326 ERA, 455 fielding dependent, but he's given up 1.3 home runs, 4.6 walks per 9 innings, and he's supported by a lineup that ranks just 27th in the big leagues in terms of run production. Jose Ramirez has been great. He continues to move the line, give you over a 350 on base. He's been supplying those 26 home runs, and Steven Kwan at the top. He's been a little bit shaky over the last few days, but still hitting about a 275, but Then you just look at the cavalcade of different guys that just are not producing for the team. It was so bad that they sent Carlos Santana pretty much to the Chicago Cubs as Daniel Schneemann, Gabriel Urias, CJ Kayfus, Will Wilson, Nolan Jones, Lane Thomas, who's been banged up, David Fry, John Ketsey Noel, whole bunch of guys. And you get 225 or lower. Kyle Manzardo, about a 310 on base. We'd like to see that go northward, but has been able to give you 24 home runs. The saving grace for the Guardians, a top 6 team in terms of bullpen ERA, even with Emmanuel Clase being out of the fold due to the investigation. We've got a whole bunch of guys like Kobe Aller, Nick Enright, Eric Zabrowski, Jacob Junis, who have stepped up, been able to give you a sub 305 ERA for Hunter Gaddis. He's right around about a 3.5 ERA. Cade Smith has had his issues recently, but all in all, it's a solid bullpen. I do think that Zach Kent, who hasn't necessarily had the world's greatest ERA, has some upside in. For the Tampa Bay Rays, that is a little bit of a concern because they had Eric Orze at the big league level towards the beginning part of the season. I'm not sure why they sent him down to the minor leagues because right now Brian Baker, Griffin Jackson are getting meaningful innings, and both of these guys have been shaky throughout the season to say the least, but Pete Fairbanks, Garrett Clevenger, they've been able to give you a sub 3 ERA, and they've been sort of mixing and matching with Mason Engler, give you about a 3.85 ERA along with Edwin Uceta. Those are your main line guys. And for Junior Caminero, 40 home runs, really doesn't draw a lot of walks, but it's able at 265 along with Brandon Lau, who's hitting at 265, 28 home runs. Yandy Diaz, he's just below 300 with regards to his average since the beginning of the month of June, hitting well above a 315, 22 home runs. You don't have a lot of power outside of that, and you could use a little bit more of the shortstop spot with the likes of Taylor Walls and company. The catcher spot has been atrocious, and Christopher Morel. These guys hitting at 225 or lower, but Chandler Simpson, 39 stolen bags, hitting a 295 at the leadoff spot. Jake Mangum hitting a 295. That's been pretty solid, and I do think that the Rays find a way to get the Williams, and I think that Seymour continues to be dominant. So I told it at 8.4, like that 8.5 under, and the Rays on the money line up to a minus 130. 919, 920 on the card. It is the Minnesota Twins on the road against the Kansas City Royals, says Michael Waka, and if he has a bad start, it turns into the dying Pac-Man voice. Michael Waka, 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 goes for the Royals, and one Mr. Pablo Lopez. Good to say that again. He's back on the bump for the Minnesota Twins. Total on this game is 8. The over is minus 115, under is minus 105. Royals are between minus 130 to minus 140 favorites, plus 118 to plus 122. That number on the Twins, and I did set the Royals at a minus 135, willing to go up to there with the money line. Michael Waka is not a guy that's going to necessarily blow you away. Only about 6.6 strikeouts per 9 innings, but is a pretty steady guy. Had a little bit of a rough go of it in his last start, giving up the 4 runs against the Detroit Tigers, but still 0.8 home runs, 2.3 walks allowed per 9 innings, 3.52 ERA, and a 3.60 independent despite the fact that he's not getting a lot of swing and miss. And for Michael Waka, he's been very solid when he's been in Kansas City this year. 4 home runs allowed in 77 and 2/3 innings, 3.01 ERA, backed up by a top 7 team in terms of bullpen ERAs. You've been able to have so many of these guys. Lucas Ursedge, Carlos Aceves really be able to come through for you big time. I know that Daniel Lynch was dealing with injury, getting him back, and his sub 3 ERA is big, and we've had nice production out of John Schreiber recently, who's been a little bit up and down, sub 325 ERA along with Taylor Clark. Flip side for Pablo Lopez, this is going to be his first start in quite some time. As a matter of fact, June 3rd, so about 3 months. In his minor league rehab starts in St. Paul, he actually looked very solid. 10 strikeouts, so 1 walk per 9 innings, 281 ERA. So I do think that he's going to be back up here, able to give you 5 or 6 strong innings. I don't think that he's going to quite be the Pablo Lopez that we saw towards the beginning part of the season. In his 11 starts, 282 ERA, 9 strikeouts, and 0.7 home runs per 9 innings. And he does face off against the Royals team that overall this season are in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of run scoring. They've been much better ever since the All-Star break. In the upper half of the big leagues there, you've had Vinny Pasquantino supplied 28 home runs, and Salvador Perez was able to go deep yesterday. He's up to 24 to 25 bombs. Hasn't necessarily been hitting for a lot of average, but Bobby Witt Jr. is over 20 home runs, over 30 stolen bases, giving you a 350 on base. Miguel Garcia, under the radar, has been very good for the team as well. He's been able to supply over a 350 on base. He's giving you some stolen bags, 15 plus home runs, so do like that. The young guys just have not been great. They had to send John Ray back down to the minor league level. Michael Massey has not been able to give you too much. Now they're looking at Carter Jensen to be able to give you a little bit of pop as a young 22-year-old. And then on the other end, you've got yourself a bunch in the Minnesota Twins that is just flat out gutted. Their bullpen is in the bottom 8 in terms of ERA as they traded away all their good guys like Yohan Duran, Louis Varland and company. And now you're left with Cody Funderburk, Michael Tonkin, a whole bunch of guys posting up over a 450 ERA. I will say Erasmo Ramirez has actually been relatively okay, but Justin Topa, Cole Sands really have not been in. For the Twins, they do have some boppers in the lineup like Matt Wallner has been able to give you 20 home runs. Problem is, he's hitting less than a 210. Does give you, though, about a 310 with regards to his on base. Royce Lewis has had a season to forget. 10 home runs at about 290 at bats, a sub 300 on base. You've had Cody Clemens supply 14 home runs, but He's another guy giving you just a 280 on base. It's been all up to Byron Buxton this year. 21 stolen bases, 333 on base, 29 home runs. And then Trevor Larnach, Brooks Lee, in between a 242 to a 254, combined 30 home runs out of both of those guys. Ryan Jeffers, to his credit, has been able to give you about a 350 on base as well. But I do think that with the Kansas City Royals, they're going to be able to get a good start out of Walker and find a way to get the job done. I did set my total at an 8.6 just because I like fading guys off the injured list and do think that the Twins bullpen going to give up some runs. So like the money line here of the Royals, and I'm going to be in on this 8 over, 921, 922 on the card. The Astros are going to be on the road against the Rangers as Merrill Kelly goes for the Rangers and Hunter Brown is projected by many to be going for the Astros, but that is not confirmed, so this game is off the board. And it's going to be a wild difference as opposed to whether or not you do get Hunter Brown or not, because if you don't get Hunter Brown, it's most likely a bullpen game. With it being Brown versus Kelly, I set the Rangers at a minus 106 on the money line, would be willing to go up to minus 105 there, plus 107 or better, looking at the Astros, and then set a low total of 7.4, 7 or less, looking at the over 7.5 prior to the under. If it's on Hunter Brown, this probably goes to the Rangers being about a minus 142, a minus 145 favorite, and then 8 or less to the over, 8.5 prior to the under. So a lot hinges upon whether or not Hunter Brown goes out there, and rightfully so. 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's only been giving up about 2.5 to 3 walks per 9. It's just been a steady Eddie guy all season long for the Houston Astros team, and it's an Astros team that overall for the season has been in the top half of the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, but it gets magnified even more whether or not Hunter Brown goes out there, as this is a very banged up bullpen that is currently without Josh Hader. He's currently on the injured list. Bennett Sosa has been able to give you a sub 3 ERA on the injured list. You still have the Bryants, Brian King, Brian Abreu, Steven Okert. These guys have been able to give you a sub 325 ERA, but I mean, if you don't get them out there, that's probably going to be a difference of about 40 or so cents. Now, you could have someone come off the injured list unexpectedly, but I mean, that's a big, giant TBD, so we're going to see what happens on that front end. For the Houston Astros, this has been a team that ever since the All-Star break has been in the bottom 6 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. You do have Jose Altuve supplying 24 home runs, hitting at 270, and I do think that Yordan Alvarez is going to be able to get it going as well. Spent a long time on the injured list. Overall, since he's come off the injured list, has been able to give this team a little bit of a spark. Hasn't really been hitting for the deep ball, but has been able to move the line, get on base, and that's something that you do like to see for the team, about a 366 on base overall for the season. Since picking up Carlos Correa, he's been solid in terms of finding a way on, 350 on base. You've had Cam Smith have his issues recently, but Jeremy Pena is sitting above a 300. Christian Walker, again, only about a 300 on base with 21 home runs out of him. And Yunier Diaz, 253 average, 283 on base. Need to improve that, but 18 home runs out of him. And for the flip side for the Texas Rangers, this is a lineup that ever since the beginning of the month of July has been averaging about 5.2 runs per game, albeit that 20 spot that they put up against the LA Angels about a week or so ago was very much a nice booster with that regard, and they are dealing with a few injuries. Corey Seager, along with Marcus Semien, have been dealing with ailments over the last week or so, but Wyatt Langford has been able to do a nice job of carrying the mail for the team. 340 on base, he's up to 21 home runs. Adolis Garcia, he's able to supply power with 18 home runs, but just a 277 on base. He's going to need to improve that. You've had Josh Smith be able to give you about a 335 on base as well. Josh Young is hitting for about a 255, so you've got guys out there that are able to move the line, but ever since Evan Carter's been out, it has been a little bit more touch and go, but this is a Rangers team that also provides a really good bullpen. Has got a lot of guys that have been able to give you that sub 325 ERA. Hobie Milner, Robert Garcia had a little bit of a tough go of it about a month or so ago, but he's back in full form, newly off the injured list. Chris Martin, Sean Armstrong, these guys have been able to do a solid job, and whenever Cole Winn has been out there, he's been good as well, as always some injuries, but he should be all good to go in this game as well. And for Merrill Kelly, ever since he joined the Texas Rangers, he's been steady as they come. 331 ERA. He's only getting about 7.1 strikeouts per 9 innings. That's down from his time with Arizona, and has given up 7 home runs in his 6 starts across 35 and third innings. Has been able to really cut down on the damage of those, with most of those being solo home runs. That is a little bit of a concern, but if you go back to his time when he was playing over with the Arizona Diamondbacks, was only giving up closer to about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings, so I do think that that'll revert to form. So, I mean, like I said, big giant change if you get Brown or if you get the bullpen game. For Kelly versus Brown, set the Rangers at a minus 106 on the money line, so minus 105 or better, we'll be looking at the Rangers, plus 107 the Astros, and then 7 or less on the over, 7.5 or higher the under. If it's not under Brown, 8 or less to the over, 8.5 or higher to the under, and depending upon the situation, Rangers probably go to like a minus 145, minus 150 on the money line. Again, that would depend upon who wouldn't start in place of under Brown, but that's what we're looking at right now. 923, 924 on the card. The Angels play host to the Athletics as Mason Barnett is on the bump for the Athletics. Right now, it's all to be determined who's going to be on the bump for the Angels. It looks like it should be Jose Soriano, but a lot of places have yet to list an opener on this one. At FanDuel, we are starting to see an initial opener with it being Soriano against Barnett, with minus 146 being the number on the Angels, plus 124 on the Athletics, and then A total of 9.5 with heavy juice on the under, minus 120 on the under. The over is currently at even money, and with this one, I did set the Angels on the money line at a minus 143. I do think that when we get a market-wide number, this should be able to put me on the Angels if we can get down to a minus 142 or better, which I am fully expecting. Jose Soriano does have some pretty extreme home and road splits, so that does cause a little bit of caution with myself. Overall for the season, Soriano, not some sort of strikeout artist, 8 strikeouts at 3.8 walks per 9 innings, but has been a master at keeping the ball in the yard really throughout his entire career. Going back to last year, 0.6 home runs allowed per 9 innings, but you look at Soriano on the road versus in Los Angeles, it's been night and day. For Soriano, when he's been on the road, he has been absolutely magnificent, posting up an ERA of a 2.47, 4 home runs allowed in 87 at third innings, still only giving up about 0.9 home runs per 9 innings at home, but that ERA does go up to a 5.11, and he does go up against an Athletics team that, if you look ever since the All-Star break, they have been a top 8 offense in terms of run production, quartet of guys who have been able to just really slug it out, 23 plus home runs out of all of them, hitting at least a 260 with Shea Langolaris, Shea Bangs being able to give you 29 home runs, and then Nick Kurtz, he's up to 28 bombs, nearly 400 on base. Tyler Soderstrom hitting at 275 with his 23 home runs, and then Brett Rooker, 27 bombs, hitting at 270. Now, the bottom of the lineup has been a little bit suspect as Denzel Clark is out with a lot of injuries. Max Muncy, the wrong one, has not necessarily provided too much. Gio Urshela, it's been a little bit of Flopperoonie and JJ Bleday hitting at 215, but that top end of the lineup has been very good. Now, for the Athletics, the bullpen just continues to be relatively miserable for the team. Even with Sean Newcomb, Michael Kelly, both being able to give you a sub 350 ERA. Justin Sterner has been able to work on things as well. He's back to about a 365 ERA. Elvis Alvarado, just below a 4 ERA, but the likes of Scott McGill, Tyler Ferguson, Osvaldo Bido, who they've utilized as a starter a little bit, these guys just have not been great. And then, obviously, for the LA Angels, overall for the season, a bottom 6 team in terms of bullpen ERA. If you look since the beginning of the month of June, though, they've actually been right around about league average. Brock and Rolberg, Kenley Jansen have been able to give you a sub 325 ERA. Now, you still have likes of Reed Detmers, Ryan Zephyrian, Jose Fermin, Sam Bachman, who have been giving you north of a 390 ERA. But for the Angels, this is a top 5 team in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. They've had Mike Trout in and out of the lineup a little bit. When he's been fully active and healthy, giving you 20 home runs, but still hitting just a 231 for the season with a 361 on base. Taylor Ward, 320 on base. He's up to about 30 home runs. And then Joe Adell, just a 302 on base, but 33 home runs. Logan Hoppy, again, just a 260 on base, 19 home runs. So you've got a lot of guys slugging it out, and maybe deal with the injury to Ore Soler. But that said, for Mason Barnett, he is a young gun that just made his MLB debut, and at the minor league level, he showed some nice signs of, shall we say, promise for Barnett. He went out there in his first start. He did give up the 5 spot in 4 innings, so that's a little bit of a concern. And if you go back to what he was able to do with the Las Vegas Aviators this season, he was getting about 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. 6.13 ERA does not really show how well he pitched. He was giving up about 5 walks per 9 innings, so he's a little bit wild there. Was much better at the minor league level during the 2024 campaign when he was a part of the Royals organization, but he does have some swing and miss in him. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a higher scoring game, but I do think that the 9.5 is a scotch too high, semi-total 9.1, so at a 9.5 or higher, I'll be in on the under, and for the Angels, willing to go up to a minus 142 on that money line. 925, 926 on the card. The Orioles play out the Dodgers as Tyler Glasnow is on the bump for the Dodgers and Dean Kramer is on the bump for the Baltimore Orioles. Most places have this game off the board as well. We've had a lot of off the board games in this one, but with the one opener that I am seeing, it's a minus 164 on the Dodgers, plus 138 on the Orioles with a total of 8.5. The over at a minus 115, under at a minus 105. And if you're looking to lay a run off right now with the Dodgers, you're finding that at a plus 108. That is not going to be the market number, but hey, if you can get a plus 108 on the run line, that's pretty solid. That said, I'm probably going to be looking at the Orioles in this spot. I set the Orioles at a plus 146 on the money line. When it's all said and done, I do think that we should be able to see somewhere in that neighborhood, and if we could get like a minus 115 in terms of getting a run off with them, I would actually be willing to sign up for that as well. Not quite sure if we're going to be able to find that, but that's it for Tyler Glasnow. He just has been giving up a few too many walks for my liking. For Glasnow, he still has the really good swing and miss stuff, and since coming off the injury list, he has been able to do a pretty solid job for the Dodgers team. For the season, 341 ERA, 416 fielding dependent, but again, going back to it, the 4+ walks per 9 innings have been a big giant issue. Now, quite a bit of that came in his first few starts of the season. You take a look at him ever since the All-Star break, he has been able to do a little bit of better job of being stable, but he still has been giving up over 3.5 walks per 9 innings in that time span as well, so that does have you a little bit concerned. And with Glasnow, about a 3.35 ERA with 1.2 home runs per 9 innings allowed ever since the All-Star break. And for Dean Kramer, he's been a whole lot better when he has been in Baltimore rather than when he's been on the road. Overall for the season, a 4.52 ERA, but 4.04 fielding dependent, 1.2 home runs, 2.3 walks allowed per 9 innings. Had that disastrous start against the Astros where he gave up the 6th spot, and he's given up a combined now 14 runs, 13 of which have been unearned in his last 2 starts, so he does come in relatively bad form. But again, much of these struggles have come on the road. 3.26 home ERA. At home, he is still giving up about 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. On the road, that actually drops to more like 1 home run per 9 innings, but the 5.53 ERA on the road, that's quite a bit of a concern. And for the Dodgers, without Max Muncy, if you look since the beginning of the month of July, they've been in the bottom half of the big leagues in terms of their overall run production. Now, you know what to expect out of Shohei Ohtani, even though you might not be able to pitch as of right now. 46 home runs, over a 380 on base. He's been rock solid, and you look at the names in that lineup, and they're still rock solid. Now, Dalton rushing whenever he gets a start like he did yesterday, that's not necessarily so great, but now they're getting back Kai-Sung Kim, hitting about a 300. Teoscar Hernandez doesn't hit for a lot of on base, but over 20 home runs. Eddie Paz has been able to do a nice job hitting at 275, 24 home runs. Mookie Betts having a down year, but you know that he's capable of being able to give you some good production, and this is a Dodgers bullpen that has gotten a lot of pieces back. You've in the last few weeks gotten back Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, and Michael Kopech, though we'll say for Yates and Scott both above a 3.35 ERA. Ben Casparis has been rough, and Blake Trine has been very good since coming off the injury list. He's got his ERA below a 3, but on the other end, you do have a Baltimore Orioles team that is a whole lot better with their offense when they're at home rather than away from home. Away from home, this is an Orioles team that is 4th worst in the big leagues in terms of run production with about 3.9 to 4 runs per game. At home, they are putting up more like 4.8 runs per game. It is a banged up team with Samuel Basallo trying to be able to step up. He's had some struggles at the catcher spot, but they are very bullish on him with Adley Rushman, Jordan Westberg, and Tyler O'Neill all on the injury list right now. But Dylan Beavers has been able to hit darn near 300. He's been able to give this team some good production. Gunnar Henderson continues to give you about a 350 on base. He's up to 16 home runs. Jackson Holliday, he's been able to do a rock solid job with 16 bombs. Just hitting at 250, the on base percentage could use some work. Same goes for Ryan Mountcastle, but he's found a way to be able to slug out some hits as well. Big concern that you've got for the Orioles bottom 7 team in terms of bullpen area. You've got a lot of guys like Ynier Cano, Sean Dubin, Grant Wolfram that are all posting up an ERA above a 4. Corbin Martin, these guys have just not been great to say the least, but if I could get a plus 147 or higher on the Orioles, I'll be looking at them on the money line. I would need this to go down to a minus 145 to take a shot on the Dodgers, and I did some I told it at 8.9, so at the 8.5, I'm in on the over. 927, 928 on the card. The Mariners are on the road against the Atlanta Braves as Chris Sale looks to be worth a buy for the Atlanta Braves, and Mr. Logan Gilbert is on the bump for Seattle. 7.5 is the total. Over and under both at minus 110 and minus 133 to minus 144. That number on the Atlanta Braves, plus 118 to a plus 123 is that number on Seattle, and I'm going to be in on the over, so I total at 7.9. For Chris Sale, he's making just his 2nd start since coming off the injury list. Looked relatively rock solid in that first start against the Philadelphia Phillies, and he had to do that start on the road in Philadelphia, which obviously that's one of the toughest places to pitch in all of baseball. It felt like they really did him right in terms of the rehab appearances as well, because this is very much a lost season for the Atlanta Braves. When he was pitching down there at AAA Gwinnett, he only made 3 appearances, went 10 1/3 innings, and then he comes back in his last start against the Philadelphia Phillies and looks relatively rock solid. So I do feel good about him. Maybe he's going to be on a little bit of an innings restriction moving forward, as in that start against the Philadelphia Phillies really didn't show too much of that. 1 run allowed over the course of 6 innings, something to monitor, but looks like he should be full bore here. And for Logan Gilbert, the big reason why I just can't back him here, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with the Atlanta Braves, set them more around a minus 140 on the money line, is that he just has not been able to perform well on the road. Now, to his credit, last start against the Cleveland Guardians was relatively rock solid, but for the season, 5.80 ERA with 2 home runs allowed per 9 innings. Good news is he's also backed up by a lineup that is number 4 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game away from home. The reason why Seattle's offensive numbers sometimes get a little bit dwarfed is that they are in one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks in all of baseball, and you've got Eugenio Suarez along with Cal Raleigh, one of the biggest, shall we say, dumpers in all of baseball, to utilize that term, as Cal Raleigh up to 51 home runs, but he's been all or nothing with regards to home runs this far this season, as he does have a 352 on base, but really doesn't give you a whole heck of a lot of doubles or anything like that. And since coming on over, and Eugenio Suarez actually played for the Seattle Mariners before they traded for him, 6 home runs at 113 at-bats, but hitting just a $195, though you do have likes of Julio Rodriguez and Ore Polanco who have been able to give you a double-figure amount of homers, be a little bit more reliable. Both of these guys above a 315 on base. Rodriguez 28 home runs, Polanco 23 bombs, and then Randy Arozarena. He's been dipping a little bit with regards to that on base, but 336 on base. He's been able to give this team 26 home runs, and then J.P. Crawford along with Dom Canzone move the line. I do like the top end of the Seattle Mariners bullpen as well. Andres Munoz has had his fair share of blown saves, but he, Matt Brash, Gabe Spire, Edward Bizardo, these have been all guys that have been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, so they've been able to do a very rock-solid job with that regard. And then on the flip side, it is an Atlanta Braves bullpen that, if you look since the beginning of the month of July, they have been in the bottom 6 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Dylan Lee is starting to regress a little bit as he's providing right around about a 3.40 ERA. You've actually had Dylan Dodby pretty solid out of the bullpen with a 3.25 ERA. Despo Hernandez, Pierce Johnson, these guys have been relatively rock solid, but Raciel Iglesias, even though he's been better over the last few weeks, he's had so many different issues thus far this season. But for the Atlanta Braves, we have seen the rise of this offense ever since the All-Star break. They have been firing all cylinders, not quite back to the offense that we truly all know and love, but still, they've been a top 7 team with regards to run production ever since the All-Star break. Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back, give you over a 400 on base, has been rock solid. Matt Olson, Marcell Ozuna, both of these guys between about a 358 to a 365 on base. Ozuna's up to 20 bombs, Matt Olson 21 home runs. Michael Harris, he's only giving you a 269 on base. He needs to work on that, but he's up to 17 home runs now as well. Drake Baldwin, Ozzy Albies, along with Acuna, I mentioned before, Sean Murphy, all between 15 and 16 home runs as well. And Jurickson Profar, home run every about 19.5 to 20 at-bats as well. So I do think that you're going to get some run scoring here, and I do think that Chris Sale is able to go out there. Maybe he's not quite the Chris Sale of old, but he looked relatively good in that start against the Phillies. I think that he's going to be relatively full bore, and I think that that'll be enough for the Braves to get the job done, set them at a minus 140. So like the Braves money line, and here to 7.5, I'm in on the over, semi total 7.9, and wrap things up with 9.29, 9.30 on the card. The Red Sox are on the road against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Eduardo Rodriguez goes for the Saints, and Peyton Tolley goes for the Red Sox. Red Sox do find themselves as a favorite of between minus 122 to a minus 132, plus 108 to a plus 112 is that number on Arizona. 8.5 is the total. Over is minus 120, and the under is even, and made my total 9.2. So I'm going to be in on this total over for Eduardo Rodriguez. It just has not been a great season for him, as he's currently rocking an ERA of a 5.40. His fielding independent is a little bit better than that, but still give it up 1.5 home runs, 3.7 walks per 9 innings, at least 4 runs allowed in 5 out of his 10 starts since the beginning of the month of July. So that's an issue, and then he's backed up by a bullpen that has been all sorts of rough thus far this season. 4.68 ERA there. That is 26th in all of baseball. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, they just don't have anyone other than Andrew Safrank, who's actually been very good coming off the injured list, to be able to rely upon, as you've got these guys like Bryce Jarvis, who's been utilized as a bit of a long guy, Kyle Bacchus, Juan Murillo, Jalen Beeks, all posting up and above a 3.80 ERA. This is a team that's still in the top 8 in the big leagues in terms of run scoring, even with trading away Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. You do have Geraldo Perdomo supplying a 380 on base with 16 home runs. Corbin Carroll, he's up to 29 home runs, has really been able to hit the deep ball over the last month or so. He was a bit shaky coming off the injury list, but he's back to the guy that we all know and love. Pavin Smith has dealt with injuries throughout the season, and they landed him back on the injury list. That was not great to say the least, but now you've got Gabriel Moreno back, who's been able to about a 275. Ketel Marte has slowed down with the deep ball, but he's still giving you a 390 on base as well. Some of the young guys like a Blaze Alexander could use a little bit more out of them, but all in all, it's been a solid lineup, and for the Boston Red Sox, Roman Anthony being out of the lineup is going to be a big deal for them. Wasn't necessarily the deep ball, but was giving you darn near 400 on base. But this is still a solid lineup that is in the top 7 in the big leagues in terms of run production, as they've been dealing with the injury to Weiler Abreu. But Trevor Story, he's up to 23 home runs. On base percentage continues to improve, as you've got a lot of guys for this Boston Red Sox team that are hitting, we're going to call it that neighborhood of 248 to a 260, with having Jaron Duran, Story, Sadat Rafaela, Carlos Narvaez. When he comes back, Abreu as well. You need a bit more of Masataka Yoshida, just a 242 average and not too much of a home run hitter, but Rami Gonzalez, I think, is going to be able to step up for the team. He's been able to darn near 300, and the Roman Anthony injury means that Rob Refsnyder is probably going to be seeing some more opportunity, and when he's been able to get an opportunity, he's hit it like a 280 with a 360 on base. Not too much of a power hitter, but he's been solid, and this is a Red Sox bullpen that does rank in the top 5 of the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, with Aroldis Chapman posting up a 1 ERA with darn near 13 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has been absolutely magnificent, but outside of him, you've got the likes of a Greg Weiser, Steven Matz, Garrett Whitlock, Justin Wilson, who have all been able to give you sub 3 ERA, with Whitlock being able to provide some nice long relief. Brendan Bernardino has been relatively solid as well. And for Peyton Tolley, he's making a second career start. First start went 5+ innings against the Pittsburgh Pirates. He allowed 2 runs. Nothing where you're really writing home about it and you're saying it was magnificent. Nothing that really hurts you either. But I do think that for Peyton Tolley, he does have quite a bit of upside here, as he was over at the minor league level this year, posting up about a 3.04 ERA. He got 13 strikeouts per 9 innings. The 2.5 walks per 9 innings, certainly workable as well. He was a little bit worse at the AAA level, as most of this came at the single A and the AA level, but he's been a fast riser. I think that he's going to be able to give you a solid start, but again, it's a big step up now. I haven't played against the Diamondbacks after start number 1 was at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates, so do think that you get some runs scored on both sides. So I tell it 9.2. I like the over. Could always set the Red Sox at a minus 106 on the money line, with this being Tolley's first ever road start. Think that there might be be a little bit of struggle here, so we'll take the Diamondbacks with plus money on the money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the Vietti family of podcasts. Big thanks to Danny Vietti. He does great work over at CBS Sports and the Wake and Rake podcast. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast throughout the regular season into the postseason, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.